What you're watching right now isn't a war zone in Baghdad. It's Minneapolis in January 2026. And those aren't soldiers. They're U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents breaking into a private home without a judge-signed warrant. But what we're seeing isn't just what seems to be a blatantly illegal act. It's something much bigger, something the White House and federal agencies don't want you to focus on. The video captured federal immigration agents, fully armed, ramming a residential door, pushing past people in the street, pepper spraying protesters, and dragging a man out of his house. What's shocking is not just that they did all of this, but how they did it. And then we have to explore why this matters. Federal immigration officials have the ability to issue what's called administrative warrants. These are internal orders signed by an ICE officer, but those types of warrants do not actually allow forced entry into someone's home without consent. A legal expert told the Associated Press that, quote, a warrant signed by an immigration officer only authorizes arrest in a public area. It does not authorize forced entry. That means when agents breach a home without consent and do not have a warrant signed by an actual judge, they're potentially breaking the law themselves because those actions would almost assuredly be unconstitutional. So why did I just say potentially breaking the law? In at least one scenario, it's not just potential, it's flat out illegal. If law enforcement breaks into a home without consent, that's unconstitutional, period. Unless the occupants explicitly invite them in, officers cannot enter a private residence without a warrant signed by a judge. There are only a few narrow exceptions to this rule. ICE can claim exigent circumstances, which means someone is in imminent danger, they are in hot pursuit of a fleeing suspect, or there is an immediate risk of evidence being destroyed. The problem with these claims is that they are frequently abused in court. So no, we don't know with absolute certainty whether or not ICE will later argue that one of these exceptions applied in this case. But based on what we can actually see, the video clearly shows officers entering without consent, and reporting indicates that they did not have a warrant signed by a judge. In my view, that makes this unconstitutional. I'm not a lawyer, but the Constitution is pretty clear on this. You can judge it for yourself, so here, take a look at the video. So this isn't an isolated house raid. It's part of what the Department of Homeland Security called its largest enforcement operation ever. Literally shipping thousands of ICE agents into Minneapolis against the will of the city and the state. They're out there showing full force and then some, even while legal questions swirl around what they're actually allowed to do. Tensions exploded, not just over the raids, but after a federal agent murdered a woman during an immigration operation last week. And we covered that in one of our videos last week. So Minneapolis has been described as on edge and angry since that controversial killing. And this is what Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis had to say to ICE. Take a look.
To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. There's a lot of information that is swirling around right now, and
So let's take a look at this story that has been covered widely by HuffPost and other outlets about an Iranian immigrant detained by ICE, despite their support for Trump's immigration agenda. HuffPost is reporting that an Alabama woman married to an Iranian immigrant says her family regrets supporting President Donald Trump and his aggressive immigration policies after ICE detained her husband over the weekend as part of a recent roundup of Iranian nationals. Quote, "We believed in his immigration policies and were completely blindsided and truly believed that only criminals were being detained," end quote. Morgan Gardner told Newsweek. Well, ain't that a bitch? What have you learned? It goes on to say Gardner's husband, Ribvar Karimi, was one of 11 Iranian nationals arrested Sunday and taken into the custody of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Department of Homeland Security claimed the arrest reflects its, quote, "commitment to keeping known and suspected terrorists out of American communities." DHS has painted Karimi as a threat to national security, saying he served as a sniper in the Iranian army from 2018 to 2021 and had an Islamic Republic of Iran army identification card. Military service is compulsory in Iran for all men aged 18 to 49. Draft evaders face prosecution and may lose their social benefits and civil rights, including employment, education, and the ability to leave the country. Deserters face imprisonment. So that quote from HuffPost gets to something deeper. When enforcement becomes so broad and unaccountable, it's bound to catch people who never expected to be targets. Even the MAGA supporters who support the very policies that put ICE agents in their own neighborhoods. Now they find themselves FAFOing in real time when it's them or their immediate family members who are being targeted and hauled away. But hey, you get what you get, and you don't throw a fucking fit. I'm not one for I told you so's, but we tried to tell y'all. So, of course, the official line from the administration and Kristi Noem is that operations like this, quote, "protect public safety and remove dangerous offenders," end quote. But on the ground, we're seeing two very different realities. Videos of raids without proper warrants, massive deployments in cities that didn't ask for them and have publicly stated they don't want to be invaded, and community uprisings and legal challenges calling the surge unconstitutional. And this is happening while the federal government tries to change the narrative, saying violence and resistance are to blame for the backlash instead of admitting the truth behind why they have chosen this strategy in the first place. They are threatened by what truly makes America great, and that is our multiculturalism. That diversity is our greatest strength, and they are actively trying to strip it out of our society. And this is only the beginning, because with people like Stephen Miller sitting right next to Trump, it's clear this agenda isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to escalate. This doesn't get better, it gets worse. But look, Minnesota isn't taking this line down. The state and the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul have sued Trump's federal government, calling the enforcement campaign a federal invasion that violates constitutional rights. We haven't seen anything like this in decades, y'all. And it's a sign that the resistance is only getting bigger. If this keeps going, this stops being about policy and could become a full-blown constitutional standoff, one this country hasn't had in modern times. Hell, maybe it never had it at all. So, when you see this footage like this, agents bursting into homes, dragging people out, protesters clashing in the street, remember what you're watching is not normal. It's not supposed to be this way. It's a consequence of how inept Trump and his administration is, how hateful rhetoric became policy, and how enforcement without accountability affects the entire population and not just the intended targets. And whether you believe in tough immigration enforcement or not, The question we all need to be asking ourselves is this: when does enforcing the law cross over into something far more dangerous? And who gets to decide? Subscribe for more. Peace.